Selam guys, welcome to another video. So glad you're here. Now guys, this video is going to be my understanding of Ramadan. Okay. Now I can't just explain what I think Ramadan is. I have to actually show you guys how I came to this conceived notion, and inshallah it will be a bit of a learning process for you all as well in regards to other ideas within the Qur'an that I'm going to tackle before I go into Ramadan. What I'm going to show you guys is, this might be a bit of a lengthy video because there's going to be a lot I'm going to cover, but inshallah you enjoy your journey and see my unique perspectives. So this video is going to cover, firstly, I'll cover the fact that the Old Testament is not the Torah mentioned by Allah. Now, in another video I show, and I'll link it here, that the Muslim Gospel or the Injil sent by Allah was delivered to us by Yahya, John the Baptist, mentioned in Surah 19. The whole contents of the Muslim Gospel, the Muslim Injil, is Surah 19, or Surah Maryam, what Yahya received and delivered upon the world, not what the disciples delivered, which is the New Testament. Now, because I've done that, I believe it's only fair to also show you guys that the Torah, the Old Testament, is not the book that Allah mentions. I have some friends who actually search still sometimes, like they'll give me quotes from the Old or New Testament, but if you're a Qur'an only follower, that is putting your trust in a hadith of men to actually justify your ideas, which I find it quite wrong if you believe you're a Qur'an only follower. So I never use the Bible. I'm going to show you guys that it is man's word and not the Old Testament, not the Torah mentioned by Allah. Once I've identified that it's not, then I'll show you guys, inshallah, that where the Torah is of Allah, so we're not lost. And then after that, the encompassing idea of what the Al-Kitab is. And after I've, inshallah, shown that, then I'm going to move on to a very unique subject of who received the first chapter of the Quran. Yes, the first chapter. Look, may Allah, peace and blessings on all the prophets that I mentioned throughout my videos. I'm not taking nothing away from the final prophet. He received the all-encompassing book of all the chapters together, which I'm going to show. But the first chapter who received, I want to show that, inshallah. Then, finally, to the topic of Ramadan. And with Ramadan, I'm going to show you guys, inshallah, what I believe to be the only physical proof, or the only example Allah has given us of a narration of Ramadan actually happening in the Quran, and what we need to do within Ramadan. Now, I'll briefly cover the topic of Selam now, fasting now, rather than going through it later on in the video, because to be honest, until I'm sure about my steps, I don't like talking about something. And Selam is one of those topics where, fasting, I should say, is one of those topics where I'm not confident in my steps yet, because I have always fasted a food fast my whole life, and I actually do it for 30 plus 10 days. And I do it a bit of an extreme way as well, where I wait till it's complete dark, so, an hour or two after everyone else has opened their fast. However, the more I study the Quran, the more I see that Siyam, fasting, is abstaining from, certain concepts and ideas rather than fasting from food. I don't want to go over this topic. Inshallah, you guys can do your own studies. If I do become more confident, by His permission, I will share it with you all. However, this isn't what I want to look at. Today, I just want to show you guys my understanding of Ramadan. So to begin with, I'll show you guys this ayat in the Quran. So what I'm starting at, guys, is the Torah is not the Old Testament mentioned in the Quran. Okay, so Quran 393. If we have a look at this ayat, it says, all the food was made lawful to the children of Israel. Okay, so everything was made lawful to the children of Israel except what Israel forbade for himself before the Torah was sent down. Say, bring the Torah and recite it if you are truthful. Very clearly, everything was made for the children of Israel lawful and they forbid for themselves. And it's not just they forbid for themselves. It says they forbid for themselves before the Torah. Therefore, what this ayat in the Qur'an is saying is that Israel actually put their own restrictions upon themselves. And because Israel was establishing their own laws against Allah, Allah made it a law for them, and then He actually punishes them as well, I should say. And I'll make you aware of this ayat in the Quran, 7:163, and it says, "And ask them about the town which was situated by the sea, when they transgressed in the Sabbath, when came to them their fish, day their Sabbath visibly, and on day not they had Sabbath not come to them. Thus we test them because they were defiantly disobeying." So here in this ayat, okay, it's basically saying that the children of Israel were restricting themselves before the Torah, and because they were, Allah sent them as a punishment. He would supply for them on their days where they could not eat or harvest it. So they weren't allowed to take that, and it was in abundance at that stage. So as a punishment. So there are many who actually believe we should follow hadith because I watched in a debate recently where the guy, he's saying that, we put restrictions, and without the hadith, you're lazy if you follow Quran alone, because hadith is what gives you that governing law. However, clearly in the Quran, clearly in many places, those that put restrictions upon themselves, it's frowned upon by Allah, and Allah then actually in this ayat, as I just showed, Allah punishes them for doing such. Okay. Now, another very important part of 393, okay, is bring the Torah and recite it if you are truthful. Say what was sent to him before the Torah, and bring down the Torah if you're truthful. Now, if the Prophet is making a request to bring the Torah if you're truthful, it has to be in an Arabic translation, or else you'd have a communication breakdown. You see, the problem with this idea is the first translation of the Old Testament into Arabic was in 900 CE, Common Era, by Sadias Gaon. So if the first translation of the Quran into Arabic was centuries after the Prophet actually existed, when he's saying bring the Torah and recite if you're truthful, it can't be an Arabic Quran. Okay? Also, what's important to notice is that when it can't actually be also in classical Hebrew as well, because the oldest testament that actually exists is in 10th century Common Era, so it's not in the same classical Hebrew as what Moses spoke. So there's a major problem with that. And now what I want to show you guys is that it can't be, another reason that it can't be that book. And the other reason is Quran 34:45, it says, "And not we had given them any scriptures which they could study, and not we sent to them before you any warner." So you can read the rest of the ayat, but the important bit of this ayat is just saying that the Prophet, no one received before the Prophet, his nation received any scriptures which they could study, and not before them any warner. So it's saying that the people of where the Prophet was sent to never received the Torah. So how can when it says bring the Torah and recite if you're truthful in 393 say that and be the same thing? Now, guys, I should say, I do apologize. I'm a little bit screaming because there's a lot of background noise. Inshallah, you guys can't hear this, but that's the reason I'm screaming. I'm losing my voice because of it as well. So, you know what? I'll actually go back to 393 and concentrate on this a little bit more and show you that the restrictions that they put upon themselves, and that how to disregard all their books. Okay, so what I'll start by showing you guys is Deuteronomy 14:6-10. Now, what's important about 14:6-10 is it shows the list of what the children of Israel restricted upon themselves. And we find this in the final book of what is considered in the Old Testament to be the Torah. Now, the whole entire Old Testament is not the Torah. It's only the first 5 books which is considered the Torah. However, in the final one, we find 14:6, where it mentions the list of what they restricted upon themselves. And as I said before, in 393, I do apologize for that. In 393, they put restrictions upon themselves. Not Allah put it, so Allah punished them for putting restrictions upon themselves. So that means the list of 14, 6 to 10 is their own list of what they've restricted. Then, to confirm that Allah has restricted them in their own list, then we find in the Qur'an 6:146. This is the list where Allah, because they've restricted themselves, Allah has made it a law that they, from then on, that is their law. And because they would not stop doing it, so Allah said, here you go. And He actually punishes them, as I showed before. What's important to notice is this comes in, the law that they put upon themselves comes in the last book of what is considered the Torah. Therefore, the books Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, the 5 books that are mentioned as considered the Torah sent by Allah, cannot be part of the Torah because it's the last chapter mentions the restriction that they put upon themselves. Therefore, everything before, and it says before the Torah, that means all these writings in Deuteronomy and before are all before the Torah actually got revealed to us. I can't stress that enough, guys. So Bereshit, or the Bereshit, the Genesis, or Shemot, which is Exodus, Vayikra, which is Leviticus, Bamidbar, which is Numbers, and Devarim, which is Deuteronomy, cannot be part of the Torah. All of them must be before the Torah, as mentioned in the Qur'an. Now, another part of Deuteronomy, which disproves that this book is actually the Old Testament, is Deuteronomy, the final chapter of what is considered the Torah, 34, 5 to 10. Again, the final chapter of the Torah mentions in it events that followed after the death of Musa. So if Musa is actually writing this or delivering this, why would it mention what happens in Deuteronomy? It's not mentioned in the next chapter afterwards. Still in Deuteronomy, what was revealed by the Torah, it mentions what happened with Musa and afterwards. Therefore, someone else is writing this, and it's not Musa, clearly not Musa. Okay? And it's definitely written after Musa as well. Another important thing is, as I showed before, I'll just quickly mention this, but Allah says He will protect His word. And as I've mentioned before in previous videos, this means not just the Quran, but any time in history that His words were delivered. That includes, the Torah was protected. The New Testament is definitely full of corruption. Now, another problem with this concept of the Old Testament being the Torah is in the Qur'an says in 48:29, Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are firm of heart against the unbelievers, compassionate among themselves. You will see them bowing down, prostrating themselves, seeking grace from Allah and pleasure. Their marks are in their faces because of the effects of prostration. That is their description in the Torah and their description in the Injil. And then Allah gives an example of the seed producing a sprout. So here in 48:29, it says the Prophet, and then it says that their example would be given in the Torah and the Injil. Okay? I've already shown you Injil is part of the Quran with Muslim gospel. And please refer to that video. However, if the description is given in the Torah, where is the description of the final prophet and his the firm at heart, the believers with him, within the Torah? It doesn't mention anywhere. Now, I should say Ahmadiyyat does, him and his students do say that it does mention the prophet in Song of Songs. And there's Song of Solomon in 5:16 off the top of my head, where it mentions the word Muhammadim in there, and kullu Muhammadim zihdudriye. I'm pretty sure something like that. But Muhammadim, the word Muhammadim is mentioned there. Say, look, he's mentioned in the Old Testament. Now that it's translated as, I'm pretty sure it was sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. Altogether lovely being the translator of Muhammadim. Now, what Ahmadiyyat and his students don't actually realize is if they actually went through and read the story of this character within the Old Testament, I realize he's not something that you'd want to attribute the Prophet with, because he is very, very sexually active, and it's more of a love story of, there are some places that are M-rated within the Bible, and this is one of those stages where it's talking about he's caressing her breast and everything else. But this is one of the passages, so you do not want to link the prophet to whoever this character is. Now, to continue, now that I've shown where the Torah, that book cannot be the Torah, what I'm going to do is continue on now to where is the Torah mentioned in the Qur'an. Now, majority of translators mistranslate Baina Yadehi to mean before, but literally means between my hands, his hands. And I show this in another video as well, where Baina in Muslim Gospel, if you wanted to go to that one, where Baina, I show a screenshot, is always either between or it's to be clear or clarify. Now, I think I should just give you a couple of examples for those who haven't watched the other video of what I'm talking about. So I'll just give you a couple of short ones in the Quran. Please refer to the Quran and search for Baina or Yadehi, and it'll come up. And so between or hands, and look for it and it'll come up. So in 350, when Isa is speaking, he says, and authenticating what is between my hands of the Torah, and to make lawful some of that which was made unlawful to you, and I have come to you with a sign from your Lord, so be aware of God and obey me. Now, Isa is, because he comes chronologically after the Torah, naturally translators translate Baina Yadehi to mean before. However, it cannot mean before. You can't have before your hands, but you can have between your hands. And as I've shown, between is used constantly. So it's always, you got to go through the list in the Quran, and you'll see everywhere that it's mentioned. I'll give you another short one as well, just so to emphasize a little bit more. 1037, this Quran could not have been produced without God. It is to authenticate what is between his hands, and to give details of the book in which there is no doubt from the Lord of the world. So I think there's only one or two translators that use between hands. However, the rest of them, and I've got 50 translations on Islam Awakened, were preferred to use before. Okay, so now why is this important? Because I showed with the Muslim Gospel that the Injil is within the Quran, and I actually identified it in Surah Maryam, Surah 19. This Torah is also a part of the Quran. It is not a separate book. Okay, the Quran confirms everything of the Torah. The Quran is the confirmation of the Torah, and everything within the Quran is the only thing we can accept within the Torah. Even if someone brings us a copy of the original copy of the Torah, if we cannot confirm it, if it has mentioned in there something that we cannot confirm in the Quran, we cannot accept it. That's why it's a confirmation. So I know that's a bit extreme, that example, but you understand what I'm trying to say. It won't never happen. It's a hypothetical, but if it does, okay? So why does then Allah, you'd think to yourself, why does Allah then use the title Torah, or use the title Injil, or use the Torah Furqan, and why does Allah use these different titles to explain it if it's all within the same book? Now, the easy way of explaining this is if someone asks you about Allah, right? You can't explain something that is unexplainable, that is incomprehensible, that is, beyond our recognition. So what Allah has given us for us to explain himself is attributes or names or titles or whatever you'd like to call them that we can actually identify with, and we will actually present it in that unique method. So for example, you can give Adl or Rahman, Rahim, Wadud, or Haq, so truth or love or mercy or justice. You can speak about anything, but the way you approach him is you're not actually approaching him via Allah. You're approaching him via one of his names. So the names play an important role because that's the paths, the unique paths that you can explain something that's indescribable. Okay, so we explain via one of his attributes, or use multiple at the same time, and some people prefer to use one over the other all the time, and that's why you get different translations of the same surah or ayat of the Quran, because one person is looking at it from their perspective, and the other one, and looking at it from Haq, for example, and the other one is looking at it from Rahman. He's seeing the mercy, he's seeing the truth, and they're just like, it doesn't get along. But in fact, if we're a little bit open-minded, you will see that they're both correct in essence. Okay, you can clearly identify whether it's a mistake, but in that sense, you can identify, that they are both on the same path. And it happens very quite often as well. Shukr Allah, try being as open-minded as possible and not dismissing anyone for that particular reason. So now the Quran mentions Torah and Injil and all this, but it mentions Al-Kitab, the singular of the word, the book, okay, over 200 times in the Quran. And it's a singular book that encompasses all the books. Okay, so Al-Kitab is basically Furqan, Sultan, Hikmah, Hudan, Nazil, Wahi. All these are different names that Zabur and Injil, Torah, Haq, the Torah, the names just go on and on and on. Ahsan, Hadith, these are all names that Allah has given us to be explain the book itself. So even the word Qur'an, which is very important as well, the word Qur'an actually means to recite. Now, the Qur'an didn't actually mention the word Qur'an before the Qur'an, Allah has mentioned the word Qur'an before the Qur'an was invented for us to understand what the Qur'an was. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing, but what I'm trying to get at, he did not create any new words. The word Qur'an pre-exists the Qur'an because the Qur'an itself is a book of understanding. So if you were reading the Quran for the first time and you saw the word Quran and you thought, what's that? Is that the title of the book? It doesn't have it on the front page, so what's that? You know what I mean? So the word Quran actually means to recite, and it has always meant that before the Quran. So it's not actually a Quran in essence if you have a book in your house that's not being used, okay? So the Quran, once it becomes a Quran, the only way it can become a Quran, I should say, is if you grab the book and open the pages and start reciting the Quran, then it becomes a recitation and it becomes a Quran, okay? So the Al-Kitab at that stage, it's just a book, becomes a Quran. And same thing, if you read the laws within the Quran, then it becomes the Torah, because that means the law. Or if you read the good news within the Quran, it becomes the Injil. And this is constantly how the Quran is. If you read, the criterions, it becomes the Al-Furqan, and so forth and so forth. So the Quran changes itself to incorporate all these things. Now, just so I can better explain it, even though Kitab is mentioned over 200 times, the plural, okay, is mentioned 6 times only in the whole entire Quran. And I'll refer you guys to Surah 98, 2-3. And it says that a messenger from God recited purified scripts, and them are valuable books. Okay, so if you read before it, if you read the ayat, you'll see, but basically what it's trying to say, it says that all of them, these books, these other books, are within this one book. And that's basically what it's trying to get to. So when you read the laws, it becomes the book that the law must be followed. When you read the good news within its pages, it becomes the Injil. So now that we've got that understanding, now to the next topic, guys. And this is a very different perspective, and inshallah you guys understand, but I'm going to present a lot of proof to back my claims. So I believe that Musa received the first chapter of the Quran. Now, why I say this is there's a lot of proof to evidence to show forth that Musa received the Quran. Now, the Quran is majority, as anyone who has read the Quran would know, majority of the Quran is about Musa. It's detailing him, whereas the final prophet is only mentioned 5 times, and once it was indirectly as well by Isa saying Ahmed. But Musa is throughout the Quran. I think it's 159. He stands at 159 times. Just his name appears. His narrations are flooded throughout the Quran. But I want to show you guys proof as to why I believe Musa received the Quran, the first chapter of the Quran. Now, I should also explain a little bit as well, guys. So from Adam to Ibrahim, okay, was a time where people were given one choice. You either accept the prophet and the word that he's delivering, or you face the consequences and suffer and die. It's simple as that. It was either like Adam, it was either, don't eat from the tree or you're going to be removed. It was Noah, get on the boat or don't, you're going to be killed. It was Lut with the people, stop your ways or you're going to be, it's constantly, it was one choice, either accept or face the consequences. It was simple as that. Then, when Ibrahim came around, he was the first person to actually release the idea of finding Allah with your own intellect, studying it and learning it for yourself. And you can clearly see that from his example. So he was the first one to use reasoning and intellect, science, to actually come up with the concept of what he believed was Allah, which is indescribable and something that only he can explain himself. So, and then from then on, it was orally transmitted. I should say as well, Ibrahim did receive a script, and I can show that script by his permission as well, what he received, inshallah, in another video. But after Ibrahim up onto Musa, okay, it was a time of oral transmission, and it was more about people versus groups, like Yusuf, for example, is a good example, where him against his brothers and so forth. Not against, but you know what I'm trying to say. But then, from Musa on to the final prophet was the time of literal revelation, where the Qur'an, I believe, was delivered to the Musa. The first written Qur'an was sent to Musa, and then it continued on from there. So, here's some proofs as to why Musa, I believe, is the actual person who received most of the content within the book of our hands. So 85, I'm going to start with the word alwa, okay? So 85, 21 to 22, it says, "No, it is a glorious Quran in a tablet, alwahin, preserved," okay? So the Quran is very blatantly saying it is an alwahin here. So let's ask ourselves, who received the alwa? And if we look in the Quran, in 7:145, it's directed straight to Musa. It says, "And we wrote for him on the tablets, alwahin," same word, "from all things a lesson, detailing all things. Take it with strength and order your people to take the best from it. I will show you the abode of the wicked." Musa has received the alwa. And then another one, 7:154, same surah. A bit further down it says, "And when the anger subsided from Musa, he took the tablets, and in its inscription was a guidance and a mercy." So here again, Musa is the one receiving the alwa. And again in 7:150, I won't read the whole thing, but this is where he got angry and cast down the alwaha. Okay, so Quran has identified itself as a alwahin, and Musa has received the alwa. Okay, then if we continue to read, I'll give you guys another proof that Musa received the Quran. And I'll start by showing you guys the word Furqan in the Quran. So, who received the Furqan? Let's ask yourselves that question. In Baqarah 2:53, it says, "And we gave Musa the book and the criterion." Perhaps you would be guided. So here, definitely, Musa is receiving the Furqan. If you go through the list of Furqan within the Quran, a lot of places it says he received the Furqan. For example, 21:48. "And we had given Musa and Harun the criterion, al-Furqana, a shining light and a reminder for the righteous." I'll give you guys another quick one as well. 25:1. "Blessed is the one who sent down the criterion, al-Furqana, to his servant, so it can be a warner to the world." Okay, so Furqan again, Musa, it doesn't necessarily mean Musa was the only one who received the Furqan, but he is definitely identified as the one receiving the Furqan. So why is this important? Well, if you look at when, not only that he received Furqan, but if you look at when it says the month of Ramadan, he's revealed the Quran, okay? Most people don't see what it says in completeness. They see the first bit of it, but they don't read the between bit. So let's read it carefully and you'll understand where I'm getting at. 2:185, "Month of Ramadan is that was revealed," "Month of Ramadan is that what was revealed therein, the Quran, a guidance for mankind and clear proofs of the guidance, and the Furqaniya," look at that, "and the criterion was revealed then as well. So whoever witnesses among you the month, then he should fast in it." So what this could mean, guys, okay, I personally believe it is Musa who received the first chapter of the Quran. Therefore, when the Quran talks about how it revealed itself in stages, it is talking about the stages from Musa to, Isa and the final prophet, okay? I believe the final prophet also receives a book as well, a physical book. He didn't deliver his physical book directly to his people because they would be confused. However, he received a physical book, ذَلِكَ كِتَابُ, that book, 2:2 it says, and he opened its pages, read one page, understood it. Then he went to his people and then read it out to his people. That's what I believe. So he did receive a book. However, this one here, it could mean that either it's talking about the prophet, the final prophet has received the Qur'an and the criterion, but it could be talking about Musa's receival of the Qur'an and the criterion. That's the way I see it. It could be both of them it's talking about, where Musa, both of them were revealed in Ramadan. So the final prophet received the Qur'an in Ramadan, and so did Musa receive the Qur'an in Ramadan. If you look at it that way, or the perspective that I said, I look at it, that Musa received the Qur'an, both ways it points to the fact that Musa received the Qur'an. Okay, so why is this important? Well, because if you look at the example of Musa in the Qur'an and the calf incident, you see clearly that is what happens in Ramadan. That is the example of Ramadan. The whole him up the mountain, and people, they're supposed to be worshipping their Lord. They're supposed to be concentrating on nothing but Allah. This is why the whole fact that they've made the juz of the Quran, so they've chopped it up into 30 bits, so people can actually read one page passage of it until for Ramadan, and every day you read one passage. So that way you can read the whole Quran. That's why it was done that way. So what I'm trying to get at, guys, is basically that at the time of Ramadan, the example we're given, the example in Musa's story, time of Ramadan, we're supposed to keep ourselves withholding and not returning back to following calves. It is a time of revelation, not just for the prophet who was up on the mountain, but it is supposed to be a time of us, following Allah alone, and revelation to ourselves as well. Now, it does mention here, when at this period as well, it's when the calf was actually created as well. And in real life, and even in our times as well, it's the exact same thing. It's these times where people fast. They actually do the hunger fast, most of them. But even fasting from following hadith, people urge the need to go back, and it's the time when they start promoting, where they're supposed to be promoting Quran alone in that time. That's the whole, as I said, whole purpose of Jews. But they will still return back to hadith and start quoting hadith and create their own crafts in this period. So I've already explained this, and I'll put a link here in this. Basically what it was, what I explained was Samiri, the one who made the calf, what he's making is actually hadith. And so I've already explained this in the video. I'll put a link here for you guys. Okay. So with understanding it this way, the way I understand the Quran, I see 30 days that he spent on the mountain revering Allah and and receiving revelations. And then the 10 days, I see the additional 10 days is when he collapsed on the mountain. And then I believe Musa is the one who took the night journey. Okay, I don't believe it's actually the final prophet, because if you read 17:1 and 2, it begins by explaining, exalted is the one who took his servant by night from Al-Masjid Al-Haram to Masjid Al-Aqsa, which we blessed its surroundings, that we may show of our signs. Indeed, he is the all-hearer, the all-seer. Right? So this is the first part. And the second one continues to say, straight afterwards, and we gave Musa the book and made it a guidance for the children of Israel, that not you take others than me, a disposer of affairs. Musa, the book. The journey is mentioned. So I believe in this situation, the Masjid al-Haram could be referring to the blessed ground that Musa was actually asked to take his shoes off, which makes a lot of sense. And Masjid al-Aqsa is actually a distant place. Now, the word Aqsa is also mentioned in another ayat of Quran as well, when Musa is being protected and a guy from a distant place came to say to him that they're following you and they're going to, attack you. So run away. So he ran away. But I see the last 10 days afterwards as being the Dhul Hijjah nights, where he actually took the journey out of his own accord to get more, knowledge from Allah. But that's basically it, guys. So as I know it took a bit long, this video, and I do apologize, and it was a lot loud, so I've lost my voice screaming it. But I thank you all for listening. I'll make this into parts. That way it's not hard for you guys to follow through. And inshallah, you guys learned something. There's a lot more I haven't even mentioned about this topic itself, but I'll just leave it here, guys. So salam alaikum, and thank you so much for listening. Alaikum salam.